Our next panel will examine how philanthropy can pave the way for lasting change.
Our first session will deep dive into how we can build the India of our dreams by 2047. Let's hear from our panel of incredible leaders. We have Raj Gilda, who will be moderating our panel called India at 2047. In his panel, we also have Megha Desai, Nalini Saligram, Ramesh Srinivasan, and Mark Foley.
Good morning again. I'm really honored to be moderator for the opening session of India Philanthropy Forum 2024, hosted by Indiaspora and Dasra. And especially, I'll start with my personal journey, because and that will also go into the background for this panel as well. I'm co-founder of Lend a Hand India. We work in schools providing vocational education as part of the high school curriculum. Dasra provided actually wind beneath our wings, when we were getting started in 2008-9. And the 4-page profile that we prepared in 2008, we're still using it, except few zeros have been added to that. But that's the value, which they brought to the table. And the reason I mentioned this here, Michael Polak, who was introduced to us by Dasra, is a Jewish American, but more Indian than any of us in the room here. When we were moving back to India, after I left my job at Citibank, and he's the one who provided, Ki Raj, what will happen to you and Sunanda, if you guys are leaving the job, and all. And he funded us for next 10 years while doing it. So I think that was one example of, what a philanthropy can do in order to get to where you are. And now with his support and likes of him, we have reached now, 15,000 schools and 1.5 million kids at a time in India. Now moving over to Indiaspora, that's why it is very special for us. Now as we are planning to scale from 15,000 schools to 200,000 schools over the next 5 years, enter Indiaspora's San Jose sort of, get together, where we met Manubhai Shah from Sarvamangal Family Trust, and he's the one who is, he and his family is the one who is providing a catalytic funding and support to take the program to more than 200,000 schools now. The reason I mentioned these two people, both Michael Polak as well as, Manubhai Shah, I think if you look at it, the difference, what they brought to us, right? And once we were able to achieve certain size, the likes of Co-Impact and JP Morgan and sort of MacArthur Foundation and all, we were able to get funding from there to leverage further. But I think the catalytic funding and support which was provided Michael and Manubhai and MR and there's something with the M. So all of you, all of you in the audience with names starting with M, please be more, giving. The difference between their support to us was at first it was a long-term support. It was continued for almost 5 to 10 years. Secondly, almost for all practical purposes, it was unrestricted funding. In that they left it to the organization to figure out what needs to be done because the org knows better in that sense. And thirdly, most importantly, supporting the system level changes, right? We are speaking here about the system change and otherwise too, and it takes time. Hardly anything is in our control, so I have to be patient. So whether it is patient capital, long-term capital, and otherwise too. So I think these are the things which are really helped us to get to where we are today, and I think that goes right into the topic for the panel today now. And I have real pleasure to have all 4 of them. When I was told that I have to moderate this panel, I said but then I spoke to Neera, and Neera is always a booster. She is master at moderating events and otherwise. So here am I today. Ramesh will start with you. Ramesh has been senior partner at McKinsey, and a dear friend of mine, he has been supporting so many of causes, education related and otherwise in India. Ramesh, you have focused on at McKinsey and in Diaspora Giving, mostly the system level focus, right, on it. Now, how can that be applied to drive a long-term change in the sort of development sector as well?
Thank you, Raj. Firstly, lovely to be here. As Raj mentioned, Ramesh Srinivasan, I've been with McKinsey for 30 years. About more than 20 years ago, my wife and I, we started this process of how can we give back. I got pretty much a free education back in India. I went to the Kendriya Vidyalaya Central School, was very, very fortunate to have some fantastic teachers, great education, and I felt it's my obligation to give back. It took me a little while to get going on that journey, and then my wife and I have started on that process. The way I've seen social change occur in the world as McKinsey, as we've been researching, it starts actually with, it's a bit like the private sector venture capital analogy. I actually find that analogy on the social sector side. Both Michael and Manubai were great inspirations of people who have an idea and can be quite catalytic in getting that idea off the ground. And then over time, private capital in India, of course, there's a more formalized CSR model can help scale up those ideas. And then eventually, foundations can play a role, like you said, Co-Impact and others. And then eventually, once governments take over the idea and then really drive things at scale, building that into what they do, is when ideas can turn into massive impact at scale. So that evolution in any field, we're going to be talking about education, about gender equity, health, climate change, all of these, there's some variant of that pattern that we have seen over time. So as at least my wife and I, we have thought about systemic change and where we can contribute. Vikram, I loved your ideas about it's not just the money, but it's the time, it's the ideas, it's the networks, it's the amplification. All of those I've seen being contributors to what we do. So we've always picked the lens with which we come at it as leaders that we can support, that we can then help unleash. The one thing that one of the things I play at McKinsey, I've just written a book on leadership, and I call myself a student of leadership. And so I feel like that's where I can contribute more. So we pick leaders. Shaheen Mistry is the first leader that we supported more than 20 years ago, and it's been, as Shaheen then started Teach for India, we've been part of that journey, and then many, many spin-offs of Teach for India along the way. And so that's the lens that we've brought. And so my invitation to philanthropists is always like, where is it that you can make a distinctive contribution? And then how can you do that over a long period of time that can have impact? That's been the thesis.
Yes, thanks. Back the person. No, thank you. So Nalini, coming to you. Nalini Shaligram, she's the CEO of Arogya World here. Nalini, healthcare has been a key area where philanthropy has given a lot of support. But still there is a lot of challenge remains, a lot to be done. What more needs to be done, and what bold action that needs to be taken, for the issue we have in front of us?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Raj. Can you hear me? Yeah, now it's very loud. Okay. So I think it's a fact that all of us will agree that India's healthcare system needs to be strengthened. There are not enough doctors, there are not enough healthcare people. There are lots of stats on that, and the COVID era really showed us that. It was the urban India that was affected, it was tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities, it was rural India. All over the country, the healthcare system must be strengthened. I won't call it weak, but it needs to be boosted. So if you look at the system, the areas that have fallen through the cracks in some way is preventive health and mental health, and much more can be done and should be done on this. I work in diabetes prevention, and Arogya World has been involved in this in India for 14 years now. And if you take diabetes and other non-communicable diseases, India is deeply affected, massively impacted. There are 100 million diabetics in India, as Dr. Mohan's group showed last year in a series of papers in the Lancet. And 136 million who are pre-diabetic, who are going to get diabetes in a few years unless we do something. It's not just up close and personal in India or to Indians, it's also to all of us Americans, that diabetes is very, very, is very close to all of us. We all know people who have either diabetes or heart disease or hypertension. So all these are related. And there are 100 million, this might shock you, 100 million people with pre-diabetes in America. Americans are affected, just like Indians, it's a global phenomenon. It's the rich and the poor countries, and it's the poorest of the poor who are the most impacted from these diseases. And the other fact about India that shocks me is that Indians get diabetes very young, 10, 20 years earlier than people in America. So at 30 years, people are getting diabetes, and you've heard so many stories of, people getting heart attacks in their 30s and stroke, and lots of famous examples as well. So this is something that should be addressed. 3 out of 4 people in cities in India are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. So how are you going to solve a problem that is so big? The government cannot do it alone. The government is investing a lot in screening for diabetes and hypertension, but is not able to focus on prevention. So that's my one area that I feel all of us can think about. We are donors in our own ways. We are all part of the Indian diaspora. So we can really think very hard about investing in prevention, because that's the solution. You cannot treat your way out of diabetes or heart disease. And these are very serious diseases, and they are going to be the reason why India does not meet the Sustainable Development Goals.
Thank you. So going from backing a person to supporting the prevention as compared to doing something later. Megha, coming to you now. As a leader of Desai Foundation, you have done a phenomenal job to achieve tremendous results. You also represent what Sanjeev mentioned, Indiaspora next, in a way. What do you think? How what approach, the catalytic approach which the Indiaspora can take, and how has been your experience so far in the lessons learned?
Thank you. Thank you. Is this on? There we go. Thank you so much. I'm really, really thrilled to be here, so thank you. I'm gonna start that answer from one step back, right? So the Desai Foundation is now a public programmatic organization, and we did that because for the first 15 years, we incubated our ideas, right? We used our own money and our own models to try to test the ideas. Once we had our MVPs, our most viable products, we opened up our table to scale. So we took investors and we opened up our organization to be a public model. And I mention this because that is a lot of the reason why we've been able to attract some of these catalytic funders. But I wanted to encourage those people that are thinking about giving in the room in terms of catalytic funding. You're gonna hear a lot today about the word catalytic funding. And what that means is not making an NGO fight so hard for a $10,000 check. What it means is put the NGO through the ringer, test them, and then trust them. And then the next time you write them the check, make sure you add a 0. The ideas around catalytic funding that can change an organization, we are an example of that. In the middle of the pandemic, when we were all scrambling to get work done, we had a funder that we'd built a relationship with over the course of many years. And he called us and said, "What is it that you really need?" And because of his trust, it was unrestricted funding. He said, "This is a cool idea, try to make this happen." He had faith that we could do it, but he also had trust that it would happen in a way whether we failed along the way or not. And I think that that is what is so important. That is how Heroes for Humanity was born. And that program, from that one $250,000 check, has impacted 5 million lives. And it's through these types of catalytic funding. So the way I encourage our diasporatic giving is find an organization you trust. Doesn't have to be ours, doesn't have to be hers, but find one and support them along the way. And I think that that is really powerful. And you know, it's so much to what you said. Find a leader that you believe in and help them lead. And I think that that's so important.
Thank you, Megha. Mark, coming to you now. You know, Mark works in Himalayan region, and you know that there's a lot which needs to be done, there. So how does an underserved region like Himalaya and Northeast and other we speak about can be better covered? Because in fact the need is all the more there more. We ourselves are worked in Northeast, and it's quite challenging to work there and all. So how have you addressed it, and what we can learn from you?
Thank you, Raj. Deeply grateful to be here for this important conversation, and if I'm invited to another forum, which I hope I do, wherever it may be in the world, I promise I'll have a new photo. That's if there's any silver lining to that photo, that's field work in India, on my last trip in India. I'm actually representing two nonprofit organizations. The first is Jamse International, a Boston-based nonprofit. Largely, our work is focused on the second nonprofit that I'm representing, which is the Jamse Gatsal Children's Community, which is located in India's most northeastern state of Arunachal Pradesh. I've known the founder of both those organizations. His name is Lipsong Phuntsok, for 25 years. So what I represent today is our collective thoughts and experiences and perspectives. In fact, I spoke with Lipsong last night about this convening, and he was so inspired by not only this gathering, but the intention behind it, and he wanted me to pass along his gratitude. And he also reminded me, which he likes to do regularly when we talk, is he said, Mark, remember that the origin of the word philanthropy is love of humanity. And that's very much reflective of the work happening at Jamse Gatsal, which in English means the garden of love and compassion. And Jamse Gatsal is in a remote state, but it's also in a remote corner on the border of Bhutan and Tibet. This community is a learning center and a home for adults and children and staff. And first and foremost, this is actually a family environment. Jamse Gatsal has been around for 18 years, but very few people know about this community, its work, and its impact, even in India. And this creates a massive awareness gap, which has a lot of downstream impacts and challenges for us. I'll mention one story in terms of a challenge this community faces, is that we all know that education is a key, if not the key, to development, and perhaps even India at 2047. So therefore, this community feels a responsibility to provide the best education possible. And as it stands today in this remote area, the best way to provide that education is to bring teachers from the plains of India. However, the challenge is the community doesn't have the operational funding to actually pay the salaries and provide the benefits that attract and keep staff members at Jamse Gatsal, especially teachers. And this creates a real problem. Every few years, the community loses teachers who are pulled back to the plains to earn, in some cases, 2 or 3 times the amount of money. And this is actually a growing problem. And it's kind of a dichotomy for these staff members who feel a passion, and they feel that their aspirations and their value system is in alignment with the community, but yet they're feeling compelled and drawn to just go earn money for the sake of earning money. So how can the diaspora step up to bridge this and other gaps? Firstly, we hope the diaspora, and it sounds like this is already happening, has a lot more convenings like this, online, offline, in various locations. And we also hope that diaspora will seek ways of gaining a deeper understanding to what's really happening on the ground. When I talked to Lipsong last night, one of the things he asked me to do was to invite all of you, and he meant this, to visit the Jamse Gatsal Children's Community. And he said, and I just want to quote, He said, Mark, I know that when our new friends, meaning you guys, can spend time at Jamse Gatsal, we will embark on a long-term relationship that will uplift our region and our country. And in fact, Jamse Gatsal is already beginning to uplift the region, and I hope to talk to you about that through the course of the day today. He also said something really interesting, which I want to highlight, which he said, it's the people of the Northeast region that will uplift the Northeast region. He said, we just need the support and resources to do so. So he asked the diaspora to understand what's happening on the ground, and from that place of trust that you mentioned, identify the authentic change makers that you want to invest in. So in closing, from a place of deeper understanding, the diaspora has a significant opportunity to bridge many gaps so that we can move forward together in long-term partnership to make sure that no part of India is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I think beautifully said, we need to help them to help themselves. Thank you. Ramesh, back to you. So if you remember, Ramesh is a senior partner at McKinsey. He helps, companies make millions of dollars, and all. And he does that with the NGO sector, as well, right? So how do you do it? And how does philanthropy can help to drive a long-term change?
Did you mean more at a personal level? How do I balance, or like what was the context behind
No,
that?
in the sense, at McKinsey, you are driving the systems change
Correct.
at the organization level with your clients. Similarly, with Teach for India and Akanksha. So how do you are you bringing your professional experience at McKinsey to
Yeah. So I do have a day job as a senior partner at McKinsey, and one of the things about 5-6 years ago that I took on was formally lead social responsibility for McKinsey as well. And our vision as McKinsey is to enable sustainable, inclusive growth in India. And I think, Vikram, you touched on this as well. As we look at we've declared quite publicly the next century, we see massive economic growth potential in India, and we see absolutely the challenge of inclusive growth is not going to happen automatically unless people are very, very conscious about how to enable inclusion. Growth in India, like many, many other economies around the world, will end up being inequitable. So that's why we think the challenge of inclusion is quite important, and we have an agenda at McKinsey where we take a few causes. So big focus in North America, in the US, especially on racial equity and bridging the racial equity gap. We also have a huge portfolio of causes we support on the 70 million Americans who don't have a college degree, and like removing the paper ceiling for them and then allowing them to pursue their ambition. So, and I know Indiaspora has also been thinking about that problem. We've had some conversations on that. So that's sort of the way McKinsey comes at that problem, and I play a role in my day job leading social responsibility. And I do have a personal portfolio that my wife and I have, and we encourage every partner at McKinsey to think about their own giving and what they want to do, and do that actually as a family and spend time. And I think I sit on 5 nonprofit boards, so it's and the reason I'm able to do that is all of them are in education. So there is even though I come at it from a leader lens, but I very much like this idea of I ask every leader, what is a global problem you want to contribute to over 20 years, 50 years? Because these are tough problems. Diabetes or obesity and cardiovascular diseases, these are not going to go away right away. These are tough systemic problems. So, and I'm able to spend time also because my wife and I are committed to it together. And my wife is a teacher herself. She's done 2 masters in education. She was a teacher in a public school in Harlem for many, many years, and now founded a nonprofit herself. So then for us, it's a collective agenda as a family that allows us to support these nonprofits. And I have a whole set of practices. It's all in the book that allow us to have such an agenda both on the professional side and on the personal side. So that's how I think about it.
Thank you, Ramesh. And
Can I just say real quick, I just want to highlight this incredibly important phrase that he just used, our portfolio. And he was talking about philanthropy. I just wanted to highlight how important that as a concept is for the donors in the room.
No, thank you. And we actually think about causes, like I spend time, like Akanksha, I spend like some time every week. Sejal is here, she knows. We have a weekly call to think about things. There are causes I support at a monthly level, quarterly level, annual level. So, and I think more time first, and then I think money that follows. Normally they're correlated. And then there's a network of people I'm catalyzing. So for every cause that I support, there's normally like, my goal is to have at least, for every hour I contribute, bring another 100 hours of other people, and every dollar I contribute, another $1,000 from other sources. So that's the amplification model.
Wow.
That I have.
In fact, to add to, not to embarrass Ramesh, here, so Lenda in India is also working in Akanksha school, introducing vocational education as part of the curriculum there. Ramesh and the McKinsey India conducts, leadership development programs. So Lenda in India has been a part of that program too. And in fact, we figured out how to keep people engaged on a Zoom call for 3 hours, which we noted all the tricks the McKinsey folks were using in India for that. And lastly, Ramesh has also opened up his home in New York to host, variety of events and other things that you want to do for any NGO, which is whether visiting from India or the local one. So I think this goes much beyond the funding, goes much beyond the, checkbook in that sense, and what all can be done. So thank you, on that front. Coming to you, Nalini, sorry, my page got, I'm like, I asked this question before. I think as a leader in healthcare, and she is specializing in the non-communicable diseases, how do we play the transformative role, right? Because, and especially as you mentioned, whether it is mental, illness or mental well-being and, diabetes and others, these are the hidden sort of, issues which are there. And how do we play some transformative role here?
Yeah, no, thank you. First of all, I really loved the topic, How do you build the India of your dreams? It just captured my imagination. So whoever came up with that, it's wonderful. So I'm going to take that as my sort of inspiration to make 2 points. I told you a little bit already about why you should care for diabetes, right, and its prevention. But I want to make 2 points to pick up on what Vikram said earlier. India truly is a shining example of, economic powerhouse, and is going to lead the way, and it's going to be the 3rd largest economy. All that is absolutely fantastic. But what's fueling that growth? It's the workforce, right? And that workforce is all in their 20s and 30s. India's median age is 27. And so the 20-year-olds are all going to get diabetes in very large numbers very quickly, okay? So think about it. Honestly, preventing diabetes, and therefore preventing stroke and heart disease and kidney disease. Look at the number of dialysis centers that are springing up in India. It's a real shame that we are willing to do that, but we have to teach healthy living to school children in schools and to working adults in workplaces, and really get companies to invest in the workforce health, physical health and mental health. And we are doing that ourselves, Arogya World is. But I did want to make the point that, hey, there's an economic and truly important outcome for diabetes prevention in India. It makes a lot of sense to me. The second point I want to make today is ask for collaboration, okay? Collaboration is the way we'll do this. We cannot scale by expansion only. We have to scale by being smart, by bringing down cost per beneficiary, and also by using each other's assets and using each other's infrastructure, okay? And this is a call to action to all of us here as individuals, as donors, as well as NGO leaders, okay? Call us out. We are so restricted with the funding we get. Our mandate, my mission is this. I gotta do this only. My system can help your system and your mission, but we are not willing to collaborate. For example, education NGOs, call out to all of you, okay? Please collaborate with Arogya World. We have an extraordinary health program, a health product that can improve the health of 11-year-olds in cost-effective ways, if we can partner with you. Second, there is a government effort on screening for diabetes and hypertension in massive ways in India. The government is focused on that. But they forget that in between annual screenings, you can do a lot. You're already capturing the phone number of every consumer or village person who shows up. Why not make that database of phone numbers available to nonprofits like us that have a text message program that is showing incredible impact? Okay, governments should partner with NGOs in serious ways. NGOs should not be afraid of governments, and also partner with each other. And as individuals, you can help people like us, even all the ways that have been described before, your networks, your power. But I ask you to help us connect with company leaders in India. Your classmate may be the head of HR in a company. Your roommate in IIT, Kendriya Vidyalaya. I was a Kendriya Vidyalaya graduate myself, so I'm very excited to hear that. You may have friends and family people who are CEOs of companies. All the investment in the world, is important. Investment is important, but so are connections, because people like us will get that leader to help us do many, many more things. Last point. It's not just companies that we invest in. We do schools and other social consumer work as well. But the company is not just being recognized as a healthy workplace. They, in fact, are now taking our text message program and making it available. 2 companies have started, Maruti and Amazon. And we're in conversations with Indian Oil. So, hey, there are lots of ways that the blue-collar workers, the warehouse people, the factory workers can be helped in multiple ways. So I call out to all of you to help us with that as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Nalini. What I will do immediately is not to add sugar to my tea, during the break. And we have just started working with Kendriya Vidyalayas, by the way.
Okay.
Thank you. Megha, coming to you again, and you being the representative of the next, generation, what what would you like to share with them, as we definitely need to bring more of them along the way, your experience, what has worked, what hasn't worked, and what has kept you going?
Yeah, thank you. Our work is in 3 verticals, right? We focus on health, preventative health for children and women, as well as livelihood training with entrepreneurship and banking and savings. And then our 3rd vertical is our menstrual equity program, which we're most known for. And, when you're focused on holistic community development, it's trickier to communicate that thing, right? We're not just focused on education or just focused on food, but it is this community aspect of what we do. And we've taken that literally. And so what we've tried to do here in the United States is build that community. And we've done is through events like the Valley on the Hudson, which we just had last week. It's 11th year that we've been hosting that event. And I'm sorry that all of your Diwali schedules are now so busy, but it's because we kind of catalyzed this season. And people weren't hosting public Diwali parties before. And through our community events like that, and Diwali on the Hudson's a little different. It's not a sit-down gala, right? It is a fun, community-centered event that, for us, 10 years ago, I was talking to my peers, and when I was trying to get them excited about investing in India, they were kind of looking around their neighborhood and saying, well, I think I want to invest my money here because this is where my kids are going to grow up. And I said, that makes total sense. I get that. And we have to look back at India and make sure that we're investing in India. And the example that I often remind everyone is, if the pandemic taught us anything, that when India fails, the world fails. And if we are not investing in the health in the education and in the systems around, or in the women in India, we're going to have a really hard time succeeding around the world. And so it is what we try to do to encourage and remind folks by hosting cultural events, by trying to create excitement around, we do a lot of publicity on our menstrual campaign, not because it necessarily helps educate Americans, right? It's more about how do we excite people and connect with them. And so that is what we were doing. We're really investing a lot of time and energy to ensure that, the Desai Foundation has funders for the next 25 years, and that's going to be our peers, my next generation. My 16-year-old nephew has just finished his first internship with the Desai Foundation. He went by himself to India, stayed in a village, and worked at the programming. He built a computer camp, he taught Lego robotics, and I can tell you he came back a really transformed individual. And I think that bringing people to India and showing them the work, is really important.
Yes. Thank you, Meghna. Maybe we can look into Holi, the festival of colors, to...
We have a Holi event in Miami, actually. It'll be in March. Mark your calendars.
She told me to plug this in, by the way. So Mark, working in Himalaya region, understanding of the local culture, local practices, it is so much necessary if you want to, help even them to help themselves, and all. Now, somebody who is sitting here in US, in Boston or New York or LA, how do you bridge that gap? And I know you said you called him last night, and so full marks to you to prepare for this panel, but what otherwise,
I appreciate the question, and you might think that Megha and I prepared the perfect segue, because I just want to take off of exactly how she just finished her commentary about how important it is to visit, because in all likelihood there will be a transformative experience. But of course the biggest challenge is logistical. I mean, to get to remote locations, but in the case of Jamse Gatsal, an extremely remote location, it's not easy. But in order to really kind of immerse yourself into the work that's happening, but more importantly, the impact that it's having, and depending upon the work of an NGO, in this case, this is a home and a learning center and a school for children that come from highly traumatic backgrounds, but yet they're becoming happy and resilient and they're flourishing. So how does that happen? You can't learn about that on a website or read a paper. You have to come and experience that for yourself. Lobsang in the community realizes this. And now the community is 18 years old, they've really begun to open up their doors, and they are encouraging small group trips 2 to 3 times a year. And I would welcome any subgroup of us here from Diaspora, Indiaspora, to come to visit the community and spend time. And during the immersive experience when you're at Jamse Gatsal, you learn a lot about the pedagogical model of this community, which is educating the heart, the mind, the body. You learn about its sustainability and mindful way of living, and you also learn about cultural preservation, which is a big part of this community in India, but it's a part of India that used to be Tibet. So all of the children come from the Mampa nomadic tribe, and there's a really important cultural context there as well too. An interesting aspect of visits when groups come to spend time at Jamse Gatsal is Lobsang's perspective, and I think this also creates an opportunity to think of philanthropy in this way, is that Lobsang feels a responsibility, and he asks the question, what can Jamse do for you? As opposed to what can you do for Jamse? So when people come and spend time at the community, Lobsang himself makes himself available to spend a lot of time with the visitors and sharing his insights and his philosophies and his perspectives. So from that immersive experience, you can really establish a mutuality of aligned interest and that level of trust that can lend itself to a long-term partnership. But we also know that these visits are not always possible, especially like in the Northeast region alone, those 8 states. Dasra has a new report coming out soon that identified 9,000 NGOs. So it's pretty hard to visit 9,000 NGOs. Over the last couple of years, Lobsang and other leaders from that region have spent a lot of time going to conclaves and conferences throughout India, large gatherings. And those are central locations where the diaspora could meet with these NGO leaders and organize other events. In addition, and I realize how fortunate I am to have this opportunity being here in Boston, and it is auspicious that this event is taking place in Boston. So I'm here. I travel to Jamse Gatsal 2 or 3 times a year. So I serve as the bridge of that distance gap and the conduit to the community on an ongoing basis with our supporters around the world. And I welcome an opportunity to collaborate with the diaspora on future opportunities, and I'm certainly looking forward to the conversations that will unfold today. Lobsang also, with a lot of prodding, is now really comfortable with technology. So he's really good with Zoom and WhatsApp, and starting next year, we're going to be doing monthly Zoom meetings with our global supporters around the world. After 18 years of this, what was once called the Brave Social Experiment, becoming a model of education and sustainable living, Lobsang now feels a responsibility to travel the world and share the story of Jamse and what's happening. So one of the things the diaspora could do moving forward is Lobsang is looking for example, the diaspora. If you're interested, you could invite Lobsang to your organizations, to your schools, to your communities to come and speak so that he can really share the stories. Also next year, we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of Jamse, and we're preparing to launch a new documentary film that's a follow-up on a film that was released in 2014 that some of you might have seen called Tashi and the Monk. So as we look to next year, the diaspora also has an opportunity in conjunction with this new film and Lobsang Traveling to figure out ways in which he can share and amplify the impact of Jamse. If you can't come and be at the community, he wants to come and be with all of you.
So Mark, I think we're probably going to run out of time soon. So
sorry. Okay.
Wrap it
No,
up. Yeah.
perfect.
Half a minute, yeah. Thank you. No, go ahead. Wrap up your...
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is, in terms of Lobsang, his intentionality in terms of traveling and sharing Jamse is the work of this community is already uplifting the region. So what he wants to do is not only create awareness for his community, but he's looking to uplift the region and uplift the country, and also really to uplift a world that is really sort of, I think, yearning for messages of hope and purpose and meaning, given all the chaos that's around us today. So certainly we believe that together we can move forward with our love of humanity towards the vision of India at 2047 and do this together. So thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Mark, and please convey our wishes to Jamse for doing such a, because I know how difficult it is to work in the Northeast, area. I was supposed to summarize, but I'm glad that we have run out of the time because, to summarize such a pearls of wisdom would have been very difficult for me to do the justice. But we'll close with one of the, a quick 30-minute film from one of our students from our program. 30 seconds, yeah, 30 minutes. I was just making sure that you guys are listening,
It was said that only boys can do this because it is related to electrician field or architecture field or your other fields which are related to only boys. But it's not important that boys can do everything. It's only that we think this. It is our thought, not the fact. So I just want to say to all the parents to please help the girls also, support them. They are not just to marry and prepare the food for their family. They can do everything if you will support them or if you will help them.
Thank you. You have been a great audience.